Hey everyone, happy Friday and welcome to the Wilder Ride. Before we start the show, wanted to remind everybody that we do have a way of financially supporting what we're doing, and that is via our Patreon page at patreon.com/The Wilder Ride. And so it goes without saying, we owe some people a thank you. Let's start off with Tara Bain, who has been with us from the very beginning, our very first patron, a stalwart supporter of the Wilder Ride. Thank you, Tara. We have 2 executive producers we need to give top billing to next. That includes Wendy Muller, who joined us last season and has been a stalwart supporter. Thank you, Wendy, for all of your support and your activity in the listeners group. And to Ross Seymour, a golden ticket subscriber. You get executive producer credit as well. Ben Forty Ford, from across the pond, a member of the podcast team of 60 Minutes With, a podcast everyone should be subscribing and listening to. Doug Greenberg, one of the hosts of The Rocky Minute, also a podcast you guys should be subscribing to. Doug, thank you so much. Off the Bounce, the basketball podcast. Thanks, Coach Peacock. We appreciate your support. A big shout out to Jeff Lieboff, one of the hosts of Radio Labyrinth, a podcast you guys should be following. Keep in mind, though, not safe for work. Also, a big thank you to Professor Robert E.G. Black, a podcaster himself, part of the Movies by Minutes family. He did the show Dave Made a Minute and Michael Myers Minute, also in the midst of The Room Minute. Yours truly, along with Walt, were both on Dave Made a Minute, and I was on the Michael Myers Minute. So thank you, Robert, for being a supporter. Melissa Moody, we appreciate your support being out there, and Rob Smithers. You guys are fantastic. It takes a lot to put on a show like this. If you'd like to be a supporter, please join our Patreon group. It starts as little as $1 a month. So let's get to it. Before we waste any more of your time, let's welcome to the stage Gene Wilder.
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey everyone, happy Friday and welcome back to The Wilder Ride, a podcast that celebrates the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. And season 2, we are diving into Blazing Saddles 1, Picks on You. I work for Mel Brooks minute at a time. I'm Alan Sanders. I'm your host.
I am Walt Murray, your co-host.
And we're so happy to close out the week with Autumn Fischer. Autumn, welcome back. And I guess I should be saying to my co-host, welcome back yourself.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a crazy couple of days.
Yeah, you've had some things on your plate, and we were able to limp along without you, and I do mean that. We were limping, but now we are at full strength.
Yeah, whatever that means. We're there.
I'm not saying it's a great picture, but at least it's full.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Autumn and I were able to get the first start of this scene underway, moving into this interior closed set with a highly choreographed song and dance number getting ready to start. And before we get into this minute, Walt, since you need to kind of get back into the swing of where we are, your thoughts, because we didn't talk about this yesterday. You were gone. So watching us all of a sudden go from the streets of Rock Ridge and a quick camera pan brings us into modern time. And next thing you know, we're watching a freaking song and dance number. What were you thinking?
I think my thought on it has always been basically the same, that this is kind of a expanding disaster. It's almost like watching the beginning of an avalanche, and every scene just gets bigger and bigger and crazier and crazier.
Well, that's a pretty good way to describe it. I mean, it does seem to continue to spill out all over the place.
Yeah, and I love that you have, a minute and a half of actually seeing this group of guys and what they're doing, and you have this kind of showman of a director, I guess. I don't even really know how to describe him. And then you have this minute. So.
Right. Well, one of the things that I forgot to get into a little bit yesterday, and I think this will be a good place to set the stage before we move into the action, because this minute has a lot of action in only a handful of lines. Autumn, this will be for your benefit too, and we can all chat on this. We go through the script and look at things that were added or changed or how they initially conceived how these scenes were supposed to run. The opening is pretty easy. We have this set piece, and they actually called him by his name. Glittering Busby Berkeley set replete with cardboard columns and twin staircases we see 30 gentlemen decked out at top hats, white ties, and tails, holding canes and poised to go into their big number. Around a camera, we see a crew and a gay 30s director in jodhpurs and a beret. They list him now finally as Buddy Bazaar. He asks, "Are Fred and Ginger ready?" The assistant director, "They're on their way, Mr. Bazaar." Then we hear off camera, "Ready, Buddy." Then Buddy Bazaar, "Thank you. All right. Very, very quiet on the set, please, because it's magic time. Roll it, turn over, action, and playback." Music starts. We hear a Hot 30s number coming from over the speakers. Men start tapping their way down the staircase and into our hearts. A loud rumbling noise suddenly intrudes upon the set. Suddenly, without warning, a section of the stage wall breaks down, collapses, and through it, a group of folks from Rock Ridge being led by Black Bart continue fighting into the scene. Now, as you'll note, that's a little different than how this plays out for us between yesterday and today.
Right. Really different. Yeah, really different.
Well, it is interesting how much they thought through this. It wasn't just a brief overview of what they were looking for. I mean, they got really detailed, even though they did go off script a decent amount here. They really had in mind something really lavish and big.
And they capture that. But I think what's interesting is, I don't know if it was because it's Dom DeLuise and they wanted to give him more lines, or if this just became this sort of an improvisation that Mel Brooks just kind of said, well, let's go with it, and let's play with it. There was absolutely nothing about a guy falling down the steps, screwing up the take.
All right, cut!
Watching Buddy Bazaar show them how to do the French mistake.
Just watch me. It's so simple.
The lines that we quoted yesterday, and then we ended with him missing his own mark and dunking his foot into the water. Voila! So this is one of those things, Walt, where I don't have any information to explain why there was that kind of a drastic change to what we have in the theatrical version.
Well, don't you think that this is more interesting than what they had in the script?
I do.
Yeah. So I feel like that would make sense, right? They would be on the scene, I don't mean to use that pun. They'd be in the moment, realizing what was going to work and what would be funny. And especially once he gets in that character, I could imagine him, Dom DeLuise sort of embodying that and coming up with funny things to do. And especially talking about like what the scene is and how all these dancers are probably gay and let's make fun of that. And,
Well, and the fact that, as we said yesterday, it specifically calls out the fact that the director is gay.
Right, sure.
So when we hear him use the epithet, the F word, he's gay himself. He's addressing his fellow gay showman.
Oh, and that's fine. I mean, you and I were talking about a little bit of drag queen culture before we started recording, and they call each other that all the time. I mean, not in a nasty way, not like the way that it might be used from a bigot, Right. They're using it in a playful way, and this is kind of the same way.
It's like a bunch of guys, or anybody that's comfortable with one another, we will, quote unquote, put each other down, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, in a play kind of way. I'll say to Walt all the time, I'm like, stop being such an ass.
Yeah.
I don't mean it in a negative, bad way. And then he comes back to me and he says, no, you're a... You mean
like
it, right?
Australians.
I thought you were being honest.
Like a right cunt.
Oh my God.
You're Australian, it's fine. Or even in if you're British, it's fine.
Right.
It's no big deal. Everybody get over it.
Yeah, I wish that's the big message for everybody to walk away with when they're listening, and or if they go back to rewatch this. First of all, get over how serious you want everything to be. You know what? Sometimes it's okay to lighten up and just laugh.
And I think, honestly, and we talk about this on the Von Haessler Doctrine, that I think that a lot of the reality that is that, right? And in reality, people are not as outraged and as sensitive and all that stuff. I mean, it's young people who are in the system of colleges and on campuses and sort of trying to figure out what the world is and how it's different than the protective sort of environment you were in when you were living at home. And then it's people who are making either money off of being outraged, or it's a smaller majority. I think even people that you might think would be super duper sensitive to, hearing the words in this movie. I'm imagining, the people who were wearing like the pussy hats and signs and marching and women's whatever. And, I feel like even those people have senses of humor. They understand where things are coming from. If they don't like somebody, then they're going to automatically assume the worst. But if they're like a free thinking person, then they might think the worst initially and then, hear out the evidence if it contradicts their original thoughts. So I just think in real life, things are not as intense as we imagine them to be, because social media and Twitter, there's sort of a veil of anonymity, and you don't have to. When you're upset by something that someone else says, you're not seeing their face, you're not hearing their inflection. There's no context to who that person is and maybe why they're saying something like that, and it really just leads down to this, cesspool of social media. Right. But I just don't feel like that's real.
We hear the phrase faux rage, like fake rage. I wonder how much of it is obligatory rage. Like, oh wait, I need to show everybody around me that's offensive to me, and sort of so that way everybody knows I would not at all think that's funny. I would never.
Virtue signaling.
Yeah, exactly. And if we would just stop putting on the sham and just be real, then I'd be a lot more, I think all of us would be more apt to then when somebody does use something in an inappropriate way, it doesn't become diluted in all this other fake outrage.
Right. It's exactly. If we start saying that we're outraged by everything, then we're outraged by nothing.
If we're all super, then nobody is.
Yeah. Well, and I think we take ourselves way too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to, your expectation of other people that they will take you and whatever your pet cause is as seriously as you do. And if they don't take it that seriously, then they're inferior to you and they need to be corrected.
Yeah, the need to be corrected is big. Like, I need to teach you the right way to be.
Let me explain why you're wrong.
Yeah. But the other side of that is if someone is trying to do that to you, I mean, you got to be the bigger person and say, all right, I'm listening to you. You know what I mean? Let them feel heard, because I feel like that's a big problem with what's happening today is that people, I know that people don't feel heard, and not just, I hear what you're saying, but I'm already disagreeing with you because I already do, just honestly, like, I really do hear you and I really honestly do disagree. And then you leave the conversation without villainizing each other. Or, it's just like with your family members that are voting different than you. You have a history built with those people and you know who they are. And you don't have to turn them into like a piece of shit that you hate because they think differently than you. You know them. And it's the same way when you're having a real conversation. And that's what I was saying too about social media. Like, people aren't in person having these conversations. And it really makes things horrible. So everybody watch this movie and just lighten the fuck up.
Lighten the fuck up.
Yeah.
Okay, you convinced me.
Okay, good job. Thank you. All right, we got a lot of
I
people
hear
here
what
that
you're saying,
love you,
Autumn.
and we just want to get help for you, Walt.
Yes, because I definitely have that problem.
I think getting back to why this scene may have expanded, I cannot help but think that maybe as they were sort of rehearsing or they were sort of playing around getting the lighting right, and they were and then maybe somebody did slip, not quite to the extent that we saw last minute Autumn, but maybe somebody didn't hit their mark, or maybe somebody turned left when they should have turned right. And all of a sudden, Dom DeLuise went into full improv mode and started, screaming things like a 30s style old school director. And Mel Brooks may have gone, this is good. Let's play with this. Let's see what we can come up with. Because at some point they had to finally make the decision, because you've got lighting now, you've got crew on set. It wasn't just completely improvised. They had to have had something, because they'd have the water going, they'd have to have the playback going, they'd have to have the music and everything. So I think they probably just played around in rehearsal. And Mel Brooks said, let's expand this. Let's give Buddy Bazaar a few more lines, because he really was only going to talk to Fred and Ginger. We were never going to see them come on screen, as if Fred, Astaire, and Ginger Rogers. And I like this better. I like him trying to show everybody how you do it. And we talked about this yesterday. I hate those kind of directors. Let me show you how bad you are, even though I hired you to be the dancers. So I think it does expand Dom DeLuise's character and actually makes it a little bit more memorable for this basically 2 minutes of the movie.
Oh, definitely.
I also wondered if they had somebody else in mind for the part, and then when they got Dom DeLuise, he, of course, by this point was already a well-known actor, and I wonder if there's sort of an obligation to give him more.
Well, that's another. Either way, I think at some point, because I think Dom DeLuise is one of those guys, he was just going to be yucking it up on the set, and he probably didn't give the same take twice, and you just have to piece together what works.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He's just one of those. I mean, we talked about this before, Walt. I hated the fact that he never really lasted or could be the solo character. He tried movies where he was like the main, but he's such a great side character, either a comic relief or a partner or somebody. He always is best when he's not carrying the load of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I mean, you look at a movie like Cannonball Run, that movie would not have been anywhere close to what it was without him in it.
Well, there's also something to be said about the fact that the number of stars that were in it, and they were all basically getting paid to have a good time.
Yeah, but he played off of Burt Reynolds, and Burt Reynolds played off of him so well that I think that it would have. I mean, they may have found somebody else who could have played that part, but not as well as Dom DeLuise. And you look at a movie like Smokey and the Bandit, which is an awesome movie, but he doesn't have the chemistry with his second partner there like he does with Dom DeLuise in Cannonball Run. So I just think he is such a strong comic actor and has such good timing that he makes every movie he's in better.
I loved him in Secret of Nim.
Oh, his voiceover with the owl, right?
Yeah.
No, he was the crow.
The crow, right.
Mm-hmm. Miss Briz. Sparkly. Sorry.
He's done a lot of cartoon
I love
voiceover.
Secret of Nim. Secret of Nim should be something that everyone watches. It's so like creepy kind of and dark and interesting looking. It's barely a kid's movie. It's amazing.
I remember reading it as a kid and going back and reading it a couple of times, just loving this whole world being created of these experimental mice that hid the fact that that basically they got a lot smarter than the scientists thought, and they could end up creating their whole world. I always thought it was neat.
So cool. Stealing the electricity from the farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Did
you ever see that, Walt?
Off the field, Miss Briz. Sorry.
That's okay. I know. I know I did. Autumn's apparently acting the whole thing out right now.
Sorry.
But it's been a long time since I've seen that, and
man,
I need to go back and rewatch that one.
It's really interesting looking. It's like the Anastasia. Did you see Anastasia when it came out?
Oh, sure.
Right. So, and that wasn't Disney. That was like the people who made Feifel Goes West or something. You know what I'm talking? American Tail. It's that other animation style that's closer to that middle Disney style that was
it's the same director, Don Bluth. That's his style of animation. He did Secrets of Nim, so he was the one responsible for American Tail. He did a lot of that, almost like where faces are a little like elastic sometimes when they're moving around. The last movie he did, which was the last combination of True Cell and a little bit of 3D, was the Titan AE movie.
Oh, okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And now you probably weren't of the age in the arcade when these two came out, but he also was the animator behind the two video games, Walt, that I know you and I lost fortunes in, Dragon's Lair and Space Ace.
Oh, Space Ace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's Don Bluth. That's his style of animation. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And
but I was picturing like Aristocats and Robin Hood in that sort of era.
Yeah, that's definitely older. That's more on that Disney side. Yeah.
Right. I know, but I feel like that style where I guess it is like cell animation versus something else. Not like a computer, but maybe using a computer to draw. I don't know. I don't know how these things work. How do we get talking about that? Dom DeLuise is a crow.
Stay on target. For our Star Wars friends, stay on target. You're too close.
Oh, good. I can't maneuver.
Stay on target.
We're too close.
Stay on target.
Loosen up.
Use the force, Luke.
Yeah, actually, I was just going through some of I think Don, I know we're going to get back to Dom DeLuise, but I remember somehow in the back of my mind, and I'm sure we'll get corrected in the listeners group, I thought Don Bluth actually started at Disney as an animator and then went and formed his own animation company. I remember reading that, and maybe I'm mixing him up with somebody else, but I thought he actually started off as a Disney animator.
See. Oh, he did All Dogs Go to Heaven? Yes.
If you go through and look at all of he's done a lot of, from The Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Rock-a-Doodle, Thumbelina. You have
Land Before Time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. These are like all up in my wheelhouse.
So,
not Rock-a-Doodle.
I get that traditional cell animation has pretty much gone to the wayside, but I always did enjoy that style that he brought to animation, to cartoons, to whatever you want to call them. But I think you're right. Calling The Secrets of NIMH a child's cartoon you're like, it's more like a tween/early teen. I mean, too young, you're going, that's scary.
That owl is scary. He kills that moth. He eats the moth. And then the rats. Oh my God, the rats are so scary. They're killing each other. Oh my God. Secret of NIMH.
Yeah, it is a little too intense for kids, I think.
Really intense.
Well, wasn't the owl Nicodemus? Or no, who was Nicodemus?
No, Nicodemus is the old rat. That was nice.
That was voiced by the Shakespearean actor Derek Jacobi. Derek Jacobi, yeah.
Ooh.
So I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that just for the voice talent that was in there.
Yeah. Yeah, the great owl was John Carradine.
By the way, Walt, for last season, a shout out, because while you're crossing your eyes about all this Secrets of NIMH talk, Arthur Mallet was also a voiceover actor for that movie.
Yeah, Mr. Agent.
Yes. And he was, of course, he was one of the town elders in Young Frankenstein and was in Mary Poppins.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I did not
see how all this stuff goes together?
Cool. So cool.
Excellent.
The best. This is the best day of my life.
It's the 6 degrees of Young Frankenstein.
Really?
Yeah, we should do that as a project, the 6 degrees of Gene Wilder.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a good idea.
All right. So when we then, since I've set the stage for what we sort of missed yesterday, we just had this conversation that allows us to see that whatever happened, whether it was Mel Brooks and Dom DeLuise working ahead of time, or it was improv, or it was just because of the gravitas of filling in the role of Buddy Bazaar. Obviously, the script was significantly changed to give Buddy Bazaar a lot more to do for a minute and a half before everybody comes crashing in, because they do come crashing in the set or in the script. They just, it's another minute and a half after all this other stuff that we watched yesterday.
Right. As a person in the audience, you're like, what? What are we doing now?
All right. Well, so before we get into then, because for me, this is what's really weird. When I watched it as a younger person, the very first few times, it still threw me that we were moving into this modern setting, quote unquote modern, because it's obviously not the Old West. And I was like, I couldn't figure out why we were doing this. And then all of a sudden, the Old West fight comes back. I was like, well, wait a minute. Are they in the Old West? It threw me for a loop mentally. I couldn't figure out what time I was in.
Well, I remember seeing this whole thing and I thought it was hilarious, but I didn't really get what was going on. I just thought they, I don't even really know what I was thinking that they were doing, but I just thought it was hilarious. But later on, I kind of understood really what this was all about, that this was more taking that and saying, okay, this is a modern message.
Right.
And see, I didn't go that deep with it when I saw it.
That's something you and I chatted about yesterday.
Yeah. I saw it and thought, like I said, what's happening? Why are we here? And then, they're busting through the movies. Okay. That's all. I didn't really think of it as, like a deeper message.
Well, and I think the nice thing about the way everything fits together here is it doesn't matter if you get the third or fourth level of meaning that is buried.
Right.
You've got the surface level. This is funny. You've got a bunch of guys all doing a routine. There's no women in the scene. You've got kind of a lispy director. You've got these actors. It's just silly. And so there's that sort of like the young kid, the younger person can laugh at the spectacle. Then you go, well, okay, they're breaking through the walls of the set. So that must mean that this movie, it's getting out of control. It's getting out of hand. There's more to it than just the surface, but you're still laughing. And then you start looking at the costuming and you say, well, now we're all of a sudden we're dressing across time. And then literally the 1874 audience or the 1874 characters come crashing into the modern movie set. And it starts to give you that sense of, the message does apply. It's not just stuck back in time. It still applies today.
So good.
So let's get to one of the things I think is great about this. And again, talking about Dom DeLuise as this actor, after he realizes he's just stepped in the water, and he goes. Then he finally goes.
Have you got it?
And they all go.
Yes.
And he goes.
Sounds like steam escaping.
It sounds like steam escaping. That to me is so funny because I've heard that before. I think Robin Williams used to say stuff like that in improv and things.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
sure.
that's not the first comedian who would say that, sort of calling into the attention that sometimes males that are gay will talk a little bit more with that sort of affectation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. Agree with me, Walt. Say it. Say yes.
Sure. I'll agree with you.
Walt's backing away from the microphone.
Not every time, just sometimes.
Right.
No, yeah, that is the stereotype.
Enough to where it makes sense that gay people would sound
and I think that's what's happening here. We're getting the purposeful, the purposeful stereotype to sort of poke fun at Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and society in general.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think there's definitely, you're calling out Hollywood here. The fact that look how whitewashed. Do you see a single black actor dressed up in 1974 on that set?
Oh, no.
They're all white. The director's white. The set handlers are white. Everyone we see, it's a whitewashed set, and it's a Hollywood throwback.
Oh. Ooh.
I mean, look, the columns are white. The walls are white. The stairs are white. I mean, it's a whitewashed set, and you're all wearing black and white, which of course now brings another layer into the conversation.
The floors are black.
The floors are black.
It signifies them walking all over the black people in the 1970s.
Well, Autumn, do you know who else didn't get this?
Who?
About the end of the movie? Burton Gilliam, who played Lyle.
Uh-huh.
When Alan brought this up to him, he was like, oh, I've never thought of that.
I never thought, I mean, that's brilliant. I honestly, I really like the idea that it is symbolic that they bust into a different time to sort of show you, right, that this isn't just applicable back in a time where no one is alive from that. You know what I mean? Like, this is such a long time ago that's so long. But here we are in the future, in the present, where this could apply. I get that. I don't know about the all white thing. Maybe that's something. I just feel like, oh yeah, maybe they are saying something. I don't know. It's hard to know whether things like that are that thought out.
So, well, and here's the thing, and I've been involved in the creative side of educational pursuits my whole life. And I actually, several like writing workshops I attended and things where I took, creative writing classes. I'd have several professors say, just because you didn't necessarily think of it on the surface, if these are themes that you believe in or you've been trying to address, you can sometimes unconsciously put things like that other people will see. That doesn't mean you thought of everything, but it's still true to the core of what you were trying to say.
Cool.
And it could very well be that Mel Brooks would be like, I never thought about every one of my dancers was all white.
Yeah.
I don't know how you couldn't do that when you're making a movie about how important it is to be inclusive of different races. But I mean, that's the way I look at it. I look at it as here's modern Hollywood because it was 1974 and they're still not showing any diversity on a film set.
Possibly, it could have been that that maybe there weren't a lot of black sort of actor dancers just available.
For what we've got here.
And think about
just
this
in
too,
general.
that you are recreating something from what'd you say, Alan, the 20s or 30s?
Well, he's a 30s style. He's dressed as a 30s director. This is like a 40s picture being made. And we're in 1974.
So you're taking a snapshot basically of the 30s and 40s here and recreating it. Well, the recreation looking like the original is whitewashed.
Okay.
Right. But don't forget what we talked about at the very beginning of this season. Hollywood was doing that with Westerns.
Right. And I think that's a big point here.
What do you mean? Not like whitewashing Westerns?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The West was, and Autumn, I know going back in time, trying to go listen now would be difficult. So I'll just tell you.
Okay.
We had some historians, including a black cowboy historian who was told his whole life there were no such thing as black cowboys. And come to find out, about 25% of all the cowboys in the West were black. We just didn't get their stories.
Right.
And so when you see it in all the old Westerns, that is not depicted at all.
I see.
And part of that was because the culture wouldn't have accepted it.
Right.
And,
Even if it was historically true, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right.
That's such a
were
weird
not
thing to
interested.
think about. So weird. I remember when I was younger and I, much younger, but and learned about, different water fountains and entrances for people. I was like, what? What? Why? You know what I mean? Like, it was so foreign, and I got a little tinge of that when you said that, like, audience wouldn't have accepted it, or maybe the actors wouldn't have accepted working next to it. Like, why? What? So weird. Such a weird time.
It's such a foreign way of thinking for all of us that's, I think, why we all accept the brilliance of this movie, because we see Mel Brooks was doing everything in his power to show how stupid it is to judge someone just on looks alone.
Yeah. They darker than us.
Woof. Oh, my goodness. I do like, and it's funny to me because, again, I've been on some of these sets where you've got a director who's so hyper, like, spastic. He's already saying,
Action! Okay. Oh, wait till I get out. Wait till I get out. Okay.
I'm like, well, you don't call action. You got to wait for your light guy, your sound guy, and your camera guy to all be, like, in concert with one another. It's always like, camera ready, camera speed, sound speed, and action or playback. But he's like, I don't care. Action. Oh, wait a minute. Let me get out of here.
To me, I had a little fantasy of him. That's like something Mel Brooks did.
Oh, that Mel Brooks would have done that. And so Dom DeLuise might have been
and, like,
sort of
maybe he
channeling.
did it a couple times where he was like, action. Oh, let me get off the set. I feel like that's.
I can see
I'm
that.
just making that up in my mind. I have no, evidence of that. I just imagine him sort of making fun of him a little bit.
But you know what? He's in so many of his own movies. He probably is used to calling action while he's in front of the camera.
Good point. So definitely.
I could see. Let's go with it. Let's just. Yeah, that's why. That's what it is. He's channeling Mel Brooks here, which would make the next joke coming up pretty funny when Slim Pickens says, "I'm working for Mel Brooks." The real Mel Brooks, not you pathetic imitation.
Yeah, I think that's hilarious because it paints it as Mel Brooks is the most important person in Hollywood.
But that he transcends from 1874 to the modern day. Like, I'm still working for Mel Brooks. We've been fighting for 100 years and I'm working for Mel Brooks.
Yeah, it really got real meta.
This fight's been going on forever. Oh, wait a minute. This fight's been going on forever.
Yeah, and it kind of became a nothing makes sense and everything makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's so abstract at some point that's the only way you can look at it is, okay, what's the message here? You can't look at it as making logical sense. It doesn't make any logical sense that we've been in 1874 in the West.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we're in modern times. And it doesn't make any sense that Harvey Korman's going to go to the movie that he's in the middle of only to watch Bart show up outside the theater of the movie he's in, but on the screen.
Well, I guess Mel Brooks kind of likes that idea because in Spaceballs, he's watching the movie before the movie comes out. Spaceballs the movie.
When does this happen? Now.
Yeah.
This is happening right now. Wait, when did that happen?
Now.
You missed it. When? Just now.
When will then be now? Soon. How soon? See what I mean? Like, he likes to do it. Prepare to fast forward. Fast forwarding. Yeah, he likes to do that. He likes to talk about the movie that's happening right now that you're watching.
I think used here is much better than in Spaceballs. Spaceballs, it's more of a visual gag.
Mm.
Here, it's not just visual. It actually says more. It says that we've been doing this. Basically, we've been having this argument, quote unquote, fight since we became, upright.
Yeah, interesting. So deep. I never thought of it that way before.
I know. It's supposed to be just this silly comedy, right?
Yeah.
We can just dismiss it. But to me, and Walt, we've gone through so many of the individual references. These guys were not stupid people. They might be writing silly jokes and slapsticky humor and just kind of going for fart jokes. But there's a lot of depth in some of these jokes and a lot of depth in the writing.
Oh, no question about it. And when we started going through this movie, I was wondering how much of that, how much depth there really was. I knew the overall message of it, but there is a lot of microscopic layer upon layer of stuff in this,
and constantly reinforced in a movie that the editing has it going just nonstop. It's just hitting you like one thing. It's like beat after beat after beat, which is fantastic. It never slows down. Not for me.
Oh no, you have to pay attention to this movie every second.
All right, so we get to the rollback. Everybody's dancing perfectly. The fountains are squirting. The chandeliers are lit. The guys are all dancing. And just as they're getting ready to come to the conclusion of this little bit, I didn't notice this before. How many of the guys in Top Hat and Tails have been waiting down below that are going to come pouring out of those two entrances?
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever notice that?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Because I'm always drawing my eye. The minute the wall starts to break, I look over there, but I purposely watched the guys in black, coat and tie, the black tuxedos. There's at least 20 guys that are coming up from below.
The cowboys or whatever coming into the scene. And how some people got stuck under the set. It looked
that's what I was watching too. That it was like the opening of the Who concert in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
People getting trampled.
But yeah, there are a lot of dudes that come out of that little cave.
Yeah, on both sides, and they're all posing. Like you got especially the ones on the stairs and on the other far side, as far away from the cacophony, are all still in their little pose, as if they don't realize what's going on. And it takes them a second before they realize, look at all this nonsense going on. You got a guy purposely bringing two horses through. He's on one, he's dragging one so we can reinforce the fact that, hey, we got horses here.
That's right. Yeah. We're still in a Western.
I think Slim Pickens was on that second horse when they came through the wall.
Did he dismount his horse and the other guy's taking it? Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. You see him for just a brief second. Comes in right around second 31. You start seeing him behind, like he's riding on the back of that guy. Is he riding a separate horse?
Yeah, it's there's two horses.
Oh yeah, I see it. And the guy he's holding back, like he's already got Slim Pickens' reins, so Slim knew he was going to jump off immediately.
Yes.
And let the other guy pull his horse out of the frame.
And there he is in the middle.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's fantastic. Walt, we were talking about this yesterday. You missed it, so I just wanted to remind. Actually, not just yesterday, but earlier in the week too. Throughout this entire scene, and Mel Brooks used him through much of the movie, there were about 80 paid stunt people that were the background extras, so that way they could be in this fight scene and they would know what they were doing.
Oh, yeah.
Mel Brooks wouldn't have to worry about necessarily choreographing everything. He would let these stunt guys kind of just go with it on the set.
That's interesting because I was looking through the crowd there trying to see how good they really were, and some of those guys are throwing great punches and taking great punches, and it's kind of a miracle nobody got hurt in this.
Right. Now, what I will show you, I can tell you what they're doing. Once these stunt guys know where the camera is, they'll know where to position themselves to not only throw the fake punch, but then the receiving. And it's all about, I don't know if you've ever done any stunt work, but I actually had a chance to be part of a stunt team for the movie Andersonville, about the Civil War prison. And the guy that was our stunt coordinator, Bud Davis, he had just finished doing the Star Trek Generations movie. And he was working on this film that I was in as a full-time extra. It was called a full-time regulator. They used us in like anytime they needed people that could be in more close-up scenes, and it could be like authentic Civil War uniforms. And the big thing he said, it's not the person who throws the punch that makes it look real. It's the person that sells it or is receiving it, because you're not really hitting them. So if you go to throw a punch and they don't move their head, well, it looks terrible. But if they snap their head in the right way and in the right direction, then your mind believes that, oh my God, they just got punched. And these guys are doing a great job of not only knowing where to be, but they know how to sell the hit. Like, I buy it.
That's smart.
Like, they know what they're doing. Like, the two guys there's two, if you watch when they first come in, there's two guys that actually kind of almost spill in and start tumbling around the ground, almost where the directors are. You'll see two guys just like comes and tackles another guy, and they almost go spilling into the film crew sitting back, filming this, dance scene. And these guys are rolling around, but they're not really throwing necessarily punches yet, but it's very frenetic. There's all this energy, And
it looks like the wall falls on a couple of guys.
Yeah.
And then the horse runs over him or something.
For movie magic, all of those implements of destruction, it's amazing what the art department can do with rubber. They can make those things look like shovels and hammers and whatever. But obviously they're actually, in those cases, hitting each other, but it's a little tougher, so it's not like a Nerf noodle or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's very much a foam or rubber instrument, so they can truly hit each other. But when you add the sound effects, you start thinking that people are getting whomped all over the place. All right, so this, I think, has always been a great gag when you talk about, the leading up to that. when you've got an actual riot. I didn't know this is what would work. You know, they should try this next time, you know, people get out of hand in Chicago and places. They just need a director wearing his, you know, pantaloons and a beret to grab a megaphone and yell, cut. Because everyone comes to a stop.
Yeah, it works.
What in the hell do you think you're doing here? This is a closed set.
Which, again, not in the script. Now, well, I take that back. It's a little different. What he says is, in the script, what's going on here? Is this some kind of grotesque joke? Then walking up to Taggart.
Oh.
What the hell do you think you're doing on my set? Taggart, this punches Buddy. No exchange about Mel Brooks and it's Buddy going up to Taggart versus Taggart coming up to Buddy.
Yeah. And no, not in the face.
Not in the face. So definite, again, tweak to the script that I think works much better cinematically. I love the fact that Slim Pickens is not about to be bossed around by this director.
It's on you. I'm working for Mel Brooks.
I really like how he delivered his lines. It's the pacing of it is really nice. He's being ridiculous, but he's also being very intentional with his lines. I just appreciate his cadence when he does this. I also love after he gets punched and the way he sort of staggers around and then says thank you. He just does such a great job with that.
I have to tell you, throwing this punch, this is like movie magic. I don't know how he didn't really hit him that hard, because I watch it, I slow it down. Slim Pickens does not only an excellent job of selling the punch, but Dom DeLuise times the sell of the hit so well.
Yeah, like jumping backward like
I'm
that.
like, oh my God, it looked like a real gut punch. I mean, because you don't see him like pull up at all. That fist comes in, and somehow we buy that he hits him with full force, and it's a great theatrical punch.
I just like him staggering around afterward. If I were the director and Dom DeLuise did that move, I'd be, yes, that's it. I loved it.
The very last thing we get is he at least acknowledges thanking, he gives a thank you to Slim for at least saying,
it's not in the face. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where is that from? I've heard that in other movies before,
Not
where somebody's about to get punched, like, just not in the face.
Yeah, you don't want to, that's the moneymaker, baby.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to hurt the face. I can recover from a rib injury.
Well, something I was wondering about this that's kind of nuts is, was Mel Brooks okay with them being in a huge brawl that's tearing through the walls of all the other sets when he says, "It's on you, I'm working for Mel Brooks"? It's like, well, this is authorized by Mel, so it's all good.
Right. I mean, I got the idea that it didn't matter. I don't care who you are. You're not signing my paycheck.
That's right. Do what I want.
Yeah, it's almost like we can do anything we want to because of that.
Well, let's go back to the very first sort of hidden embedded joke from the very first song gag that we got when Cleavon Little sang the song, I Get No Kick from Champagne.
Mm-hmm.
That is from the musical Anything Goes. And we set the stage for the whole movie, Anything Goes.
Anything goes.
Sure. And it's true. Anything is going. I wish I was doing the next couple minutes because I want to talk about what happens next.
Oh my gosh. Those are awesome.
Let's get in, girls. Yeah, I want to keep talking.
Hit Buddy.
Yeah. Come on, girls.
Okay, let's go ahead, because it is Friday, and we're going to end up having to sort of get into that minute on Monday, and there's always that little bit of trying to remind the audience where we were.
Yeah.
So we can have just a second to chat about that, because we do have to deal with the fact that this scene does have sort of that, you could argue homophobic, or you're making fun of homosexuality or whatever. I've always loved the idea that when the fight now turns into including all of these guys in top hats and tails, we get so many gags, including they're willing to fight. They're beating up on some of these guys. You see at one point, 2 guys go into the tunnel of love, yes! And they come out like, oh, God, I'm parked behind the commissary. Like, come on, we'll go on out after. I mean,
you think, well, that flips it on its head.
It does.
Right?
Just when you think you're making fun of, you're like, no, you're not. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And then even the one guy being nice to the dance, he's like, you brute, you brute, you brute, you
vicious
brute. And then
brute.
he's crying, and then he's like, it's okay. You know,
Like,
he's sweet.
there.
Yeah, see?
I love it. I think it's just, it's brilliant. Everything about it that we're going to talk about on Monday. All right. Well, we don't want to give away too much. We don't want to pull away from our Monday guest. So, Autumn, you've been with us for a couple of minutes. Walt joined us in this last minute with you. Before we get to Walt and his kind of thoughts and anything in his notes, did you have anything else in this minute that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think just what we decided, or what you've taught me, I guess, for this minute, is that this movie is a lot more layered than I first thought. And I really feel like I'm going to take the lessons from this movie and maybe apply it to other movies that I don't think are as deep. And maybe there's more meaning.
I like it.
There's not. This is the deepest one.
Spaceballs isn't there's not a deeper
No,
meaning in
there's not.
Spaceballs.
There's not.
Just to watch out.
No.
Spaceballs.
It's the difference between this is a satire, Spaceballs is a parody.
Ah.
And parodies are where you're mocking something that already exists, but a satire, you're intentionally changing the backdrop to hide a message that applies to society.
I see. Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like I got the general sort of memo about this movie when I watch it, but
I got the 411.
I did not. Yeah, I'm picking up what it's laying down, but I did not think that hard about it. And I think you're right. I think there really is something to be said for it busting through the walls like that and being in a different time and how it's applicable throughout the years. I think that's really neat.
I mean, I love the fact that we're busting through with a 45-year-old film using modern technology to deliver a podcast to an audience that now can maybe get a new message and maybe continue to reinforce the fact that this never gets old, learning how to treat people for who they are, not for what they look like.
And they're listening in the future.
They are.
So that's weird to think about.
I love
This
it.
is the past.
I
This will
love
be
it.
the past.
I gotta go back and tell my future self how brilliant this was to put this in the past.
Hey, good job. Good job, future us.
Well
Listening back to
done.
this.
My mind is blown.
2 thumbs up.
Time is a construct, everybody.
It keeps everything from happening all at once.
That's right.
Walt, do you have anything?
I really like that idea. Is time folded back on itself? Where am I?
Well, no, I don't have anything else, but if I do in the future, I'll just fold back time and insert it right here.
Mart.
Right
Here.
now.
Okay. Well, since you didn't leave a message, I guess it doesn't matter.
But that'll be for the future.
That's for the
But
future.
we're listening to it now in the future.
So I think what will happen is if there is a future message, it will show up in the future and not right now because we're in the now. When is now? We're at now. Everything that's happening now is happening now. What happened to then? When? We missed it. When? Just now. We're at now. Go back to then. When? Now. I can't. Why? We missed it. When? Just now.
Just now. Walt, do you have anything in your notes for this minute? Or for yesterday, technically, since you were absent?
No, I'm going to leave yesterday to y'all. I think you probably covered it pretty well, knowing the two of you. And I think we've covered today exceptionally well. Better than any other Movie by Minute podcast has ever covered this minute of Blazing Saddles.
You say that to every guest.
Actually, he does not.
Nope, that was the first.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right, Autumn, since this is your last minute with us, your wrap-up thoughts of the movie in general. I know we sort of talked a lot of big messages today, but anything else you want to say about the movie?
I love this movie. I hope that it doesn't at some point get canceled or anything weird because it's really cool. And people should sort of take the ridiculous notions that are spelled out in this movie by the people of Rock Ridge and apply that to their everyday lives.
100% agree. All right, Walt, before we get to how people can learn a little bit more about us or how they can maybe support us, Autumn, you are a member of the Doctrinaires, part of the Von Haessler Doctrine, a radio show in Atlanta that people can listen to from around the world thanks to modern technology. Tell us a little bit about your show and about your podcast, which is a separate project.
Sure. So the Von Haessler Doctrine is on Monday through Friday from 9 to 12. And then we do an extra half hour that's strictly on the podcast. But at around 2 o'clock every day, the whole thing's turned into a podcast. So you can find that If you just search for us, the Von Haessler Doctrine, that's Haessler. We talk about news of the day, and we get serious when we need to get serious, but then we also try and make fun of everything so that we can have a fun life and not be taking everything so serious. I'm also on Radio Labyrinth with Tim Andrews and Jeff Leboff, and that's just a pop culture podcast where we talk about what we're watching and what we are excited about coming up, and then music and podcasts and all that jazz. And then I also have my own podcast with my friend Greg Russ called One Topic, and you can find that everywhere that podcasts are caught in your podcatchers. That is a show where we come up with one topic and we try and stick to that just one topic, which is sometimes really difficult for Greg and I because we've known each other for like 20 years or something. So 20 years? Is that right? That can't be right. I'm not that old. And yeah.
Well,
so
according to your earlier episodes, that's what you told me.
That can't be right. I'm a liar. Yeah, so it's a fun podcast. We talk about one specific thing, and we talked about hotels. We've talked about what it's like to be a guest, whether you have a guest or whether you are a guest, and sort of our thoughts on that. It doesn't sound so great the way I'm selling it, but it's actually pretty interesting. So go check it out.
I've often wondered if you should have a subtitle because you call it One Topic, and I almost think it should be One Topic, and several side stories.
Well, that's the thing. So we try, it's like an exercise. You try and you do go off on these little tangents, but then you have to try and bring it back to the topic.
Right. They're little side stories. It's like Star Wars Rogue One. It's still a Star Wars movie, but it's a side story.
I see. Okay. Well, yeah, there's that. And then you can find me everywhere on social media at AutoPritz, PRITTS.
There is that.
Walt, did you just hear how I was just dismissed and she went right on?
Well, I just you're right. I don't know what else to say. You're right. we do go off on little asides.
So I'm going to change our listeners group real quick to The Wilder Ride. There is that.
There's that.
There is that.
There is that. You could say that. There is that. There's that. There is that.
Well, we start every Friday, as we did with this episode, thanking our patron subscribers. But let's remind everybody, you can be a patron too if you're not already.
Yes, you can. And the best place to go about helping us out there is to go to patreon.com/The Wilder Ride. And you can look at different levels of membership to help us out. At the $10 or more amount per month, you can get some of our Patreon-only specials, including some of our work on Poltergeist and on Christmas Vacation. And even if you just got $1 or $2 a month that you can help us out with, that would be more helpful than you can possibly know.
And think about this. We're almost to the end of this project, which means we're going to be looking to our patrons to give us some suggestions for Patreon-only films to review during the off season. So we need you to get involved and get in that loop. So that way you can add to that and say, well, I'd love to hear you guys do X. Well, you got to be a patron if you want to hear it and suggest it. So sign up and join, and we would appreciate it. All right. That's going to do it for us today on Friday. We'll let you get back to your weekend or your binging or whatever it is you're doing. We will come back on Monday, and we are going to be joined by Chris Corman, the son of Harvey Korman. We will have him for almost all of next week. We wanted to bring him in just in time to see the trope, the final Western trope. We need the duel, the bad guy, the good guy, standing off, squaring off, the sudden draw, the quick draw, the timed draw, whatever it is, you've got to have them square off. And so we wanted to have Chris Corman join us. So he'll be there to talk about his dad. He'll be there to talk about the ending, nearly the ending of the movie, but all the way through to where Headley gets shot and falls onto the pavement. But to start off next week, we'll have They've Hit Buddy, Come On Girls. And we will end Monday's minute with They Lose Me right after the bunker scene. Riot and his rioters begin to crash into the cafeteria on the Warner Brothers lot. So all of that's coming your way, not just Monday, but all of next week on this, The Wilder Ride.
Forget you. I'm working for Mel Brooks.
Autumn?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh.
What? Not in the face.
Not in
the... Was I supposed to say something already?
Shit.
Edit it so that I'm flawless.
but that would ruin the whole flow of the show.
I'll fix it in post.
You know, he was one of the agents that worked on the Wayne Williams case. And so a bunch of stuff has come up about that recently. And, you know, so anyway.
As long as he doesn't pull the Frank Drebin and find the evidence that cleared him. He goes, well, it doesn't matter now.
Yeah, it's too late.
Look, he's been in there this long. You might as well just let him stay.
God.
That's the first time I've sensed her being uncomfortable.
I'm just warming y'all up for today's episode.
All right, let's do it. I just love the way when he gets punched.
Whoa. What was the yawn?
What?
You just yawned.
Me?
Yes.
No, I did not.
You went, hi, Mel Brooks.
No.
All right, I'm going to keep it in as an outtake.
I did not
just for
yawn.
You.
I swear to God, I did not yawn.
I think that was a technical glitch.
Maybe it was. It sounded like he went, anyway, Mel Brooks. It's like, what the hell?
No, I didn't.
Oh
Did
my
I even
God.
say Mel Brooks? I don't even know what I said.
I don't know. I was just like, oh my God, we can fake it for like 5 more minutes.
No, I'm good.
Oh my God. Oh God, I can't believe I agreed to this.